The forest was quiet, except for the sound of an axe hitting wood. A human named Eli Harper stood alone among the frozen trees, his breath rising in clouds as he chopped through the thick logs. Each strike echoed across the valley, sharp, lonely, and rhythmic, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. He was building a cabin, plank by plank, log by log, far away from the noise of civilization. No one knew why he left the colony, no one cared enough to ask, and Eli liked it that way. At night, when the stars lit the snowy ground, he would sit near the small fire, his face dimly glowing, his eyes lost in thought. He rarely spoke, not even to himself, but sometimes he would whisper a name, Anna, before closing his eyes. No one answered, because no one was there. He built in silence, ate in silence, and slept in silence. But he was not alone. Far beyond the trees, high on a ridge where silver moss grew over black stone, someone watched him. A tall figure, covered in a shimmering cloak that rippled like liquid glass. Her eyes glowed faint blue, and her breathing was soft, slower than any human's. She was Alara, an alien widow of the Chiron people, who once lived in this forest long before the humans came. She had lost her mate and her child during the war that burned half her world. When she first saw the human building his strange wooden home near the old sacred ground, she wanted to drive him away. But when she looked closer, she saw his eyes, the same grief she carried in her own heart. So she stayed hidden, night after night, watching him from afar. Eli worked with his hands until his skin cracked, yet he never complained. He spoke to no one, but sometimes he would hum a song, soft and broken. The melody drifted through the forest, strange and haunting. It reached Alaria's ears, and she found herself listening, remembering the songs her mate once sang before the war. She should have hated him, a human, one of the invaders, but her heart did not listen to hate anymore. One evening, a storm rolled over the valley. Snow came down in heavy waves. Wind howled like a beast through the trees. Eli tried to cover the unfinished roof, but the storm was too strong. His hand slipped, the ladder cracked, and he fell hard against the frozen ground. The world went white, then black. For hours, nothing moved except the falling snow that slowly covered his body. From the ridge, Alara saw him fall. Something inside her snapped, a feeling she thought she had buried long ago. Without thinking, she descended through the trees, her cloak glowing faintly against the dark storm. She reached him, knelt beside his still body, and placed her hand on his chest. There was a weak beat, faint but alive. She hesitated, whispering words in her own language, a prayer of healing she hadn't spoken in years. Her hand glowed softly, spreading warmth into his body. Eli gasped and opened his eyes for a moment, just enough to see a blurred figure of light above him. He thought it was a dream, maybe an angel or memory, before darkness took him again. Alara dragged him into his cabin, lit his fire, and stayed with him through the night. She wrapped him in a blanket, her eyes full of quiet sorrow. She studied his tools, his sketches, his small metal box that held an old picture, a woman and a little girl smiling beside a lake. She touched the photo gently, whispering, "You missed them." When morning came, she was gone, leaving only faint footprints in the snow. Eli woke to find himself warm and breathing. The storm had passed, and the fire still burned bright, though he did not remember lighting it. He looked around, confused. Something felt different. The air carried a strange scent, like starlight and rain. He stepped outside and saw the snow around his cabin disturbed, a trail of footprints leading toward the forest. They were not human. He followed them a few steps, but they disappeared near the ridge. He stared at the empty trees for a long time, his heart beating fast. For the first time in months, he spoke aloud. "Who's there?" The forest gave no answer, only silence, but not the same silence as before. Somewhere beyond the trees, someone was listening, watching, waiting. And for reasons he could not explain, Eli felt less alone that morning. He went back to his cabin and sat by the fire, his eyes soft with wonder. Outside, high on the ridge, Alara stood again among the trees, her cloak shimmering under the pale sun. She watched the smoke rise from his chimney and whispered softly, "You build because you lost, human," she said, "and I watch because I remember." The forest remained quiet, but it was no longer empty. Two broken souls had crossed paths in the silence of the cold world. and neither of them knew that this meeting would change everything that followed. Eli woke to a strange feeling that morning. The air was colder than usual, but his cabin was warm, the fire alive as if someone had just tended it. He rubbed his hands together, confused, his eyes moving to the door that had been shut tight from the inside. He didn't remember getting back inside. He didn't remember lighting the fire. He only remembered the storm, the fall, and the faint shape of light above him. He shook his head, telling himself it must have been a dream, a trick of his half-frozen brain. But the footprints outside told another story. They were lighter than a human's, long and smooth like a shadow pressing into the snow. He followed them again, his heart thumping fast. The prints stopped near the ridge, exactly where he had seen the strange shimmer weeks before. He felt eyes on him, but saw no one. He whispered quietly, "If you're there, thank you." His voice broke the silence, drifting across the forest. The wind answered, soft and low, almost like a sigh. Far above, hidden between crystal trees, Alara watched again. She felt his words reach her ears, and her chest tightened with a strange warmth she had not felt in years. He had spoken to her without seeing her, and still his tone carried gratitude, not fear. Among her people, humans were known as destroyers, careless, greedy, violent. But this one, this quiet builder, had eyes full of loss, not conquest. She could not understand him, yet she felt she already did. Eli went back to work, hammering and cutting. He moved slower now, his ribs still aching from the fall. Each sound of wood meeting metal echoed into the forest like a heartbeat calling for company. From time to time, he felt the air shift, a faint shimmer at the edge of his sight, like someone watching. But he never looked too hard, as if afraid he might scare it away. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Eli sat outside, sharpening his tools. He spoke quietly, not to anyone he could see. "I don't know who helped me," he said, "but I'm thankful." Then he smiled weakly. "Guess I'm not as alone as I thought." He didn't notice that behind him, among the silver trees, a faint blue light flickered in response. That night, while he slept, Alara crept closer to the cabin again. Her cloak bent the light, making her almost invisible. Through the small window, she saw him sleeping beside the fire, the picture of his family near his hand. She pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection mingling with the image of his daughter smiling. Her throat tightened, memories flooding her mind. Her own child laughing under the twin moons, her mate's hand holding hers before the war came. She whispered, "Your heart hurts like mine, human." A small tear of silver light slid down her cheek and faded before it touched the ground. For days she watched, always silent, always near, until one night, when a strange sound echoed through the woods. A low growl, deep and metallic, something moving fast between the trees. Eli froze inside his half-built cabin, his hand reaching for the old rifle he had carried since the war. Outside, the snow trembled under heavy steps. Then came a shape, tall, jagged, and glowing red from within. A raider drone, old war technology left behind and reactivated by something deep underground. Its sensors scanned for life, marking Eli's heat signature. It aimed, ready to fire. But before the shot came, a burst of blue energy hit the drone's side. Alara leapt from the shadows, her hand glowing with pure Chiron energy. The beam cut through the metal like lightning, but the drone turned, locking onto her. It fired, a red streak burning through the dark. Alara dodged, her cloak torn by the blast, sparks flying into the snow. Eli burst through his door, shocked at the sight. He saw her clearly for the first time. Tall, elegant, eyes bright as stars, her skin marked with faint silver lines that shimmered with power. For a heartbeat, time froze. She looked at him, and he looked back, neither moving. Then the drone turned again, targeting them both. Eli didn't think. He ran forward, grabbing his axe and swinging with all his strength. The blade slammed into the drone's sensor, blinding it. It screamed, a sound of metal grinding in fury. Alara raised her hands, gathering light between her palms, and unleashed another wave. The drone exploded in a shower of molten sparks that lit the night sky. Snow and ash mixed in the wind as silence returned. Eli dropped to his knees, gasping. The world smelled of burned metal and cold air. He looked up, his eyes wide. You're real," he whispered. Alaria's chest rose and fell, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. "I am," she said softly, her voice like a melody from another world. He took a step closer, unsure if he should speak again. She turned away, her cloak reforming around her like mist. "You should not have seen me," she murmured. "Your kind is not meant to know we still exist." "But you saved me, twice," he said. Alara paused, her head tilting slightly. "Perhaps," she replied quietly, "because you remind me of someone I once loved." And just like that, she was gone again, her form fading into the dark forest. Eli stood alone, the firelight from his cabin flickering behind him. He felt his heart pounding, not from fear but from something else, a strange mix of awe and sorrow. He whispered into the night, "Who are you?" The wind answered only with her fading scent, like starlight and rain. That night, sleep did not come easily. He kept hearing her words in his mind. "You remind me of someone I once loved." He stared at the ceiling, realizing that his quiet life in the woods was no longer quiet. Something had changed, something vast and unseen. And for the first time in years, Eli didn't feel empty. He felt watched, protected, and somehow connected, as if the stars themselves were no longer so far away. The next morning, Eli stood outside his cabin staring at the burned wreck of the drone. The snow around it was melted into black glass, steam rising where alien fire had touched Earth. He ran his fingers over the twisted metal, feeling the strange symbols carved into its surface. They weren't human. They weren't anything he'd seen during the war. He looked toward the ridge where she had vanished, his breath clouding in the cold. "She's real," he whispered, half in disbelief, half in wonder. "She saved me again." For days after, he couldn't focus on building. Every creak of the forest made him turn. Every gust of wind felt like her presence. He repaired his roof, chopped more wood, cooked his simple meals. But his thoughts were never far from her, the alien woman with eyes like cold fire and a voice that echoed inside his mind. He didn't even know her name, yet her memory lingered like starlight refusing to fade. That night, as the moon hung low and silver, Eli decided he couldn't ignore it anymore. He packed a lantern, his coat, and his old rifle. He followed the trail she had taken, faint, glowing prints only visible under the moonlight. They led him deeper into the valley than he had ever gone, through thick pines and icy streams that whispered under their frozen skins. Finally, he reached a clearing surrounded by pillars of ancient stone. Each one shimmered faintly, carved with strange runes that pulsed softly as he stepped closer. It felt alive. The ground beneath him hummed. And then, a whisper, not from the wind, but from within the stones themselves. "Human," the voice said, gentle yet heavy. Eli froze, his lantern flickering in his hand. "Who's there?" he called out. A shape stepped forward from the shadows, tall, graceful, the same glowing cloak drifting like mist. It was Alara, her expression calm, but her eyes full of warning. "You should not be here," she said softly. "This place is not for your kind." Eli lowered his rifle, his voice steady but filled with something deeper. "I had to find you," he said. "You saved me. Twice. I just wanted to thank you, to understand why." Alara looked at him for a long moment before turning away. "Understanding can be dangerous," she whispered, "for both of us." He stepped closer, careful not to startle her. "I don't care about danger," he said. "I've lost everything already." Her gaze flickered to the photo tucked into his coat pocket, the woman and the child, smiling forever. "I know that pain," she said quietly. "I watched my mate and daughter burn when your armies came from the sky." Her voice cracked slightly, like a blade snapping under pressure. Eli froze, guilt washing over him even though he had never fought on this world. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it more deeply than any words could show. Alara's eyes softened. "Sorry does not bring back the stars we lost," she murmured, "but I see truth in you." For a long moment, they stood in silence, two survivors from two broken worlds. Then she raised her hand, and the runes on the stones began to glow brighter. The clearing filled with a low hum, and suddenly the ground shifted. From beneath the frost, a massive metallic door emerged, ancient and covered in vines. Eli stepped back in awe. "What is that?" "The last sanctuary of my people," Alara said, "the memory of the Chiron." The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a tunnel descending deep underground. Alara turned to him. You should leave, human, she said softly. If they know I showed you this place, it will mean death for both of us. But Eli didn't move. Then let me help, he said. Her eyes widened. Help? He nodded slowly. I've built my home with my hands, fixed machines older than me. I can help you rebuild whatever this is. Alara looked at him for a long time, the blue light in her eyes flickering like a heartbeat. Finally, she sighed. You are a strange creature, Eli Harper, she said. Humans destroy, yet you build. Together, they stepped inside. The air was warm, glowing with soft blue light from walls that seemed alive. Floating crystals hummed quietly, reflecting their faces as they walked. Eli touched one and felt a pulse, like touching memory itself. What is this place? He whispered. A vault of souls, Alara said. Every Chiron who died had their essence preserved here. Memories, dreams, songs, all waiting for peace that never came. She walked to a central chamber where a massive sphere floated. Inside it, shapes moved like smoke. Faces, voices, fragments of lives. Eli's chest tightened. It's beautiful, he said quietly. It's all that remains of my family, she answered. The lights dimmed slightly as the sphere pulsed, responding to her touch. A voice, faint and soft, filled the chamber, a child's laugh, pure and sweet. Alaria's breath caught. It's her, she whispered, my daughter. Eli stepped closer but said nothing, only watching as Alara closed her eyes, tears glowing like liquid silver on her face. He wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know how. So he stood beside her, silent, respectful, a human witness to alien grief. Then the sphere pulsed again, harder this time. The hum grew louder, the lights flickered red. Alara's eyes widened in fear. No, it's waking up, she said. Eli looked around. What's happening? The defense core. It senses a human presence. It thinks we're under attack. A low mechanical rumble filled the chamber, metal shifting deep within the walls. From the shadows, two giant sentinels began to emerge, towering constructs of light and armor. Their eyes glowed red, locking onto Eli. He raised his rifle, heart pounding. Alara stepped in front of him, shouting something in her language, her voice echoing through the chamber. But the machines didn't stop. Eli whispered, "Run." Alara turned her head slightly. "No," she said, her tone fierce. "Not again." She spread her arms, energy building in her palms. The sentinels charged. And in that instant, the ancient vault came alive once more. The chamber trembled as the sentinels stepped forward, their metal feet slamming into the glowing floor. Blue light turned crimson, warning sigils spinning through the air like shards of fire. Eli gripped his rifle, heart pounding, but the weapon looked pitiful against those towering machines. Each sentinel's body shimmered with shifting plates, ancient and alive, powered by the energy of forgotten centuries. Alara stood between him and them, her hands glowing with raw Chiron power, her cloak floating like a storm of light. "Stay behind me," she commanded, her voice calm but fierce. Eli hesitated only for a breath, then nodded, his human instinct to protect clashing with the truth that he was outmatched. The first sentinel roared, a sound like metal being torn apart, and fired a beam of white plasma that burned through the air. Alara raised her hand, forming a barrier of blue light that cracked under the pressure but held. The impact threw her back a step, snow-white sparks bursting from her fingertips. Eli ran forward, grabbing her shoulder. "You can't take both." She looked at him, eyes glowing bright. "Then fight with me, human." He didn't think, he just acted. He rolled behind a fallen console, aimed, and fired at the nearest sentinel's joints. The bullets sparked uselessly off its armor, but one shot struck a glowing seam and made it stumble. That tiny hesitation gave Alara time. She slammed her palms together, unleashing a wave of pure energy that cracked through the chamber like thunder. The blast tore one sentinel in half, its body collapsing in a rain of molten shards. The other staggered, adjusting its aim toward her. Eli saw the red beam forming. Without thinking, he ran in front of her, pushing her aside just as the shot hit. The blast grazed his shoulder, burning through his coat and skin. He fell hard, gasping, smoke rising from the wound. Alara screamed, the sound sharp and filled with something ancient, loss and rage woven together. Her power flared brighter than before, her eyes blinding white. She lifted both hands, and the remaining sentinel froze mid-step. It struggled, its metal joints shrieking, until she clenched her fists, and the machine crumpled like paper. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of fading energy. Alara knelt beside Eli, her hands trembling as she pressed them against his wound. Warm light flowed from her palms, sealing the burned flesh. "You are a fool," she whispered, voice shaking. "Why would you do that?" Eli managed a weak grin. "Guess, it's what humans do." She looked down at him, confused. "You risked your life for me, though I am not of your kind." He nodded slowly. "You saved mine first twice, seems fair." For a long moment, neither spoke. The glowing sphere above them pulsed gently now, as if watching in silence. Then Alara turned to it, her expression darkening. "The vault is unstable," she said quietly. "When I broke the defense core, I damaged the memory link." Eli pushed himself up with effort. "What does that mean?" She stared at the floating sphere. "It means my people's souls will fade soon. All that remains of them, gone." He looked at the sphere, saw shapes moving inside it. Children, families, soldiers, all flickering like candlelight in the wind. His heart tightened. He knew loss, but this was worse. Alara stood still, her hand reaching toward the light. "I kept them alive for centuries, waiting for a sign that peace could exist again, and now, it ends." Eli stepped beside her. "Maybe not," he said. "Maybe there's a way to save them." She turned sharply. "You cannot understand. This technology is bound to my blood, to our world's life force." He met her eyes. "Then let me lend you mine." She stared, confused. "Your life force is human, it will not work." Eli smiled faintly. "Maybe, but sometimes human stubbornness breaks the rules." Before she could stop him, he placed his hand on the sphere. It reacted instantly, glowing brighter, threads of light wrapping around his fingers. Pain shot through his arm, but he held on, teeth clenched. The sphere pulsed, red to blue, flickering between life and death. Alara shouted his name, trying to pull him back, but the light anchored them both. Their hands met over the sphere, human and alien, life and loss, joined by the same grief. Images flooded Eli's mind, cities of crystal floating in the sky, alien children laughing, the hum of Chiron music that sounded like wind through stars. He saw Alara's daughter, small, with silver eyes and a flower crown, reaching toward him. Then he heard her voice, faint and soft. "Mother," it said, "he carries light too." Alara gasped, tears shining on her cheeks as she felt the energy steady. The sphere's pulse slowed, stabilizing, the red fading into soft silver. Eli dropped to one knee, exhausted. Alara caught him, her hands shaking. "You linked your life to the vault," she whispered. "If I ever fall, you fall too." He looked up at her weakly. "Guess I've been alone long enough. Maybe it's time to share the silence." Her breath caught at his words. She closed her eyes, resting her forehead lightly against his. "You are more alien than you know, human," she whispered, a soft laugh breaking through her sorrow. Above them, the vault glowed with new light. Calm, living, peaceful. The ancient Chiron spirits no longer screamed, no longer flickered in pain. They sang, a low, harmonic melody that filled the chamber with warmth. Alara listened, her tears glowing faintly as she smiled for the first time in years. Eli leaned back, breathing slowly, eyes closing in relief. They had saved what remained of her world, but neither of them knew that the act had awakened something else deep beneath the vault. Something old, something watching. And far above the valley, the stars flickered, one after another, as if answering a call that had just been made. The vault lay in silence, glowing with the soft hum of restored life. The air shimmered faintly, as if the spirits inside were breathing again after centuries of sleep. Eli sat on the cold ground, his hands trembling, his veins faintly glowing with silver threads of Chiron energy. He looked up at Alara, who stood beside him, her expression a mix of awe and fear. What did we just do?" he asked quietly, his voice hoarse. Alara's eyes followed the flickering patterns along the vault walls, ancient runes now pulsing in perfect rhythm. "You bridged what should never be bridged," she whispered. "Human life, merged with Chiron memory." Eli exhaled slowly, his body aching with every breath. He felt alive, and yet not the same. His heartbeat had changed, slower, heavier, echoing faint vibrations through his chest like faint music. The air seemed to move differently around him, alive, aware. Alara knelt beside him, her glowing hand brushing lightly against his arm. "You are connected to them now," she said softly. "Every Chiron soul that remains inside the vault can feel you." Eli blinked, confused. "Feel me? You mean like I can talk to them?" She nodded, not with words, but with thoughts, emotions. "They will know your intent." Before he could reply, the vault shook again, a deep vibration rolling through the stone beneath them. Alara stood sharply, her cloak flaring with light. "No," she muttered, "it's not over." From the far end of the chamber, a massive door began to grind open, releasing a rush of stale, freezing air. The sound was ancient, like the groan of the world itself. Eli grabbed his rifle, though he knew it would be useless. "What's coming?" he asked. Alari's voice dropped to a whisper, "The warden." The ground split slightly as something emerged from the shadows, a colossal figure of living metal and bone. Its face was smooth, its eyes twin flames of gold, and its voice thundered like distant storms. "Unauthorized connection detected," it said. Eli felt a pulse in his chest respond to it, a wave of alien static crawling through his mind. He stumbled, gripping his head. "It's inside my thoughts." Alara stepped forward, her hands glowing. "Warden of Chiron memory, stand down. The bond is pure." But the warden tilted its head, scanning her. "Hybrid anomaly detected. Containment protocol initiated." It said again, louder this time. Energy surged through the floor, wrapping around them like chains of light. Eli tried to break free, but his body felt heavy, sluggish. Alara shouted something in her ancient tongue, and the chains shattered like glass. The warden roared, its arms transforming into long-bladed constructs of energy. Alara turned to Eli. "Run." He didn't move. "Not without you." "Do not argue," she shouted, but he was already beside her, gripping the old metal pipe near the wall like a weapon. The warden struck, the impact blasting them backward, sparks and dust flying into the air. Eli rolled, coughing, the sound of his rifle clattering across the floor. Alara leapt forward again, her movements fluid, her hands weaving light into a glowing arc. She fired a beam that hit the warden's shoulder, slicing through part of its armor. But the machine barely reacted, its voice echoing. "Preserve the core. Erase contamination." Eli realized what it meant. It was going to destroy the vault to erase them both. He shouted, "If that thing blows, your people's souls." "I know." Alara snapped, pain flashing in her eyes. Eli's vision blurred as his heartbeat synced again with the vault. He felt it. Thousands of faint whispers calling to him, not with words but emotion. Fear, hope, sorrow, memory. It was overwhelming, yet somehow clear. He heard the echo of a child's voice, "Save her." He looked up at Alara, and the glow in his veins pulsed brighter. He felt strength building inside. Not physical, but something deeper, older, borrowed from the very vault around him. He stood, light spilling from his hands. Alara turned, eyes wide. "Eli, your body can't hold that power." He smiled faintly. "Guess we'll find out." He lifted his arm, and a wave of energy rippled outward. The warden stumbled for the first time, its core flickering. Alara joined him, their powers intertwining. Human will and alien memory fusing into one surge of light. The vault walls blazed with ancient runes, the ground shaking violently. "Now," Alara shouted. Eli channeled everything he felt, grief, love, loss, hope, into one final strike. The beam hit the warden's chest, piercing through, light exploding outward like a sun beneath the earth. When the glow faded, silence filled the chamber once again. The warden stood motionless, then slowly collapsed, its golden eyes dimming to nothing. Eli fell to one knee, gasping for air, his skin faintly glowing like molten glass cooling down. Alara rushed to him, holding him steady. "You foolish, brave creature," she whispered. He chuckled weakly. "You're welcome." She shook her head, half in anger, half in disbelief. "The vault is stable again," she said softly. "But the link between us, it's growing stronger." Eli looked at her, his eyes glowing faintly silver. "What happens now?" he asked. Alara hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. Now, you carry part of my world inside you, and the stars will come looking for it. Outside, deep under the night sky, far above the forest and the snow, a light flickered in orbit, an old Chiron satellite. Its sensors, long dead, suddenly awoke, locking onto the faint human alien energy signature rising from the valley. It began transmitting, across vast distances, across forgotten channels of war. And far beyond the system, something ancient stirred, something that remembered the Chiron name, something that would soon return. Night settled over the valley like a dark ocean, the snow reflecting faint silver light from the shattered clouds. Eli stood outside his cabin, staring at the stars, unaware that far beyond them, something ancient had begun to move. The connection he shared with Alara still pulsed faintly inside him, a quiet rhythm like two heartbeats trying to sync. Sometimes he could feel her thoughts, not in words, but emotions, curiosity, pain, a strange warmth he couldn't name. He didn't know what to call it, but it filled the silence that used to haunt him. Alara appeared beside the tree lean, her cloak glowing softly, blending with the moonlight. She no longer hid from him. Her presence had become as natural as the wind that brushed through the forest. You shouldn't stay out here, she said gently. Your body still carries the energy of the vault. Eli smiled faintly. Feels like it's part of me now. She tilted her head, studying him with quiet wonder. It is, she said. You're bound to the Chiron memory now, whether you wish it or not. Before Eli could answer, the ground beneath them trembled, faint at first, then stronger. A distant roar echoed across the mountains, followed by a streak of burning light cutting through the night sky. Eli shielded his eyes. What the hell is that? Alaria's face turned pale blue, her eyes wide with realization. The signal, she whispered. Something heard it. Moments later, a thunderous crash tore through the valley, snow and rock exploding into the air. A fiery trail burned behind a descending object, slamming into the frozen lake beyond the ridge. Eli grabbed his rifle out of habit. Tell me that's one of your kind. Alara shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. It's something older, something that should have stayed asleep. They ran through the forest, branches whipping past, until they reached the clearing overlooking the lake. The ice was cracked open, glowing from below with eerie red light. Steam rose as the water boiled around a massive black shape rising from beneath the surface. It wasn't a ship, it was something alive, metal and flesh fused together. Its body pulsed like a living wound, and its voice was a sound that wasn't meant for human ears. Eli fell to his knees, clutching his head, the world spinning as whispers flooded his mind. Alaria's hand glowed, forming a barrier of light around them. It's a reclaimer, she said through gritted teeth, a guardian from before the war. It hunts anything that carries forbidden energy. Her eyes flicked to him, fear trembling in her voice. It's hunting you. The creature rose fully from the lake, towering and grotesque. Its body was covered in black armor like insect shell, with runes glowing in its chest. It scanned the forest, its voice echoing through the valley. Energy source detected, hybrid signature confirmed. Eli grabbed her arm. We have to run. Alara shook her head. We can't outrun a reclaimer. She lifted both hands, summoning light, her veins glowing brighter than before. Eli felt the same energy answering inside him, wild and alive. He stepped beside her. Then we stand. A small smile flickered on her face, half sorrow, half pride. You really are impossible, she said softly. The reclaimer struck first, firing a beam that tore through trees like paper. Eli dove aside, snow exploding where he stood. Alara countered with a wave of energy, her blue light meeting the reclaimer's crimson blast midair. The clash shook the earth, a storm of color lighting up the night. Eli grabbed a shard of broken vault crystal he carried. It pulsed with silver energy. He pressed it to his chest, feeling it merge with the energy inside him. For a brief second, his vision filled with stars, and then he felt the vaults whisper again. Thousands of Chiron voices echoing through his mind, guiding him, strengthening him. He stood, eyes glowing silver white. Let's end this, he said. Together they moved as one. Alara launched waves of light that cracked the reclaimer's armor, while Eli struck its weak points with bursts of radiant energy he didn't know he could control. Each hit felt like fire burning through his veins, but he didn't stop. The reclaimer roared, its chest splitting open to reveal a pulsating core, a swirling storm of red plasma. It reached for Eli, but Alara stepped between them, blocking the blast, the impact sending her flying back. "Alara," he shouted, running to her, but she raised her hand weakly. "Finish it before it calls more." Eli turned, rage burning hotter than pain. The glow around him intensified until his body looked like a silhouette carved from light. He charged, the snow melting beneath his feet. He slammed both hands against the creature's core, and the world exploded in blinding white. The blast shook the entire valley, waves of light rippling across the forest, melting snow from the treetops. When it was over, the reclaimer was gone, reduced to ash and silence. Eli fell to his knees, exhausted, his breathing shallow. Alara crawled toward him, her strength fading. He smiled weakly. "Guess, we're even now." She touched his face, her hand trembling. "You are more than human now, Eli Harper," she whispered, "and the stars will not ignore what you've done." Above them, the clouds parted, revealing a sky alive with motion. Dozens of faint silver lights moved slowly among the stars, ancient Chiron vessels awakening from centuries of sleep. The universe had heard, and it was coming. Alara looked up at the sky, her voice soft with both hope and fear. "They will come for you," she said. "For us." Eli glanced toward his cabin far below, smoke still rising from its chimney. He exhaled slowly, a quiet smile crossing his face. "Then let them come," he said. "I've rebuilt one home before. I can do it again." The night wind carried their breath into the sky. Two lost souls standing beneath the reborn stars, one human, one alien, bound by fate, silence, and fire. Neither knowing that the war of memory and rebirth had only just begun. Snow fell softly that night, covering the scars of battle as if the earth itself wanted to forget. The lake had frozen again, sealing away the ashes of the reclaimer beneath a thin layer of crystal ice. Eli sat beside the fire in his cabin, his body aching, his eyes glowing faint silver beneath the flicker of flame. He felt the bond in his chest, quiet now, but alive, a heartbeat that was not entirely his own. Outside, the forest slept, unaware that the sky above was no longer empty. Alara stood at the window, her gaze fixed on the heavens. Dozens of silver lights had appeared across the stars, moving in slow patterns. "The Chiron fleet," she whispered. "They've answered the call." Eli looked up, the realization settling heavy in his chest. "You mean they're coming here?" he said quietly. She nodded. "They will follow the signal of the vault, and now, that signal is you." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I didn't mean to start a war." Alara turned, her voice soft but steady. "You didn't start one," she said. "You woke what was buried. Hope, memory, and fear." Eli laughed dryly. "That's a lot of things to wake for one man." "You're not just a man anymore," she replied. "You're part of my people's living code now, the bridge between what was and what still might be." Before either could say more, the ground rumbled again. Outside, streaks of light tore through the clouds, ships entering the atmosphere, vast and silent. Eli and Alara stepped out into the snow as the first vessel descended, its silver hull gleaming with runes older than any human language. It hovered above the valley, releasing a low hum that vibrated through their bones. Then a beam of pale light swept across the forest, scanning, seeking. It stopped on Eli, and the voice that followed was deep and melodic, ancient yet alive. Chiron-linked human detected. It said, "State your purpose." Eli raised his voice. "I didn't choose this." The light flickered. "Choice is irrelevant. Connection confirmed." Alara stepped forward, her voice sharp. "He carries the vault's bond. He saved our legacy." The ship hesitated, the hum softening. Then a new voice, calmer, feminine, filled the air. "Identify yourself, survivor." Alara lifted her chin, her tone proud and sorrowful. "I am Alara of the Chiron, widow of Commander Thalen, keeper of the final vault." A long silence followed. Then the voice spoke again. "We believed all vault keepers lost. Your signal will change everything." Eli looked at her. "Is that good or bad?" Alara smiled faintly. "That depends on whether they still remember mercy." The ship's light dimmed, and from within the beam, 3 figures descended, tall, elegant, glowing faintly with Chiron markings. They landed in the snow before them, their faces unreadable. One of them stepped closer, his voice calm but curious. "You fused with the memory core," he said to Eli. "That should have killed you." Eli shrugged. "Guess I'm stubborn." The alien tilted his head. "Stubborn? Yes, that sounds human." He turned to Alara. "The council will want to see him." She frowned. "He won't survive their extraction process." The alien's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps he shouldn't have touched what wasn't his. Before the tension could break, the sky lit up again. This time, from the opposite horizon. Human ships, small and fast, rising from orbital bases. Alara turned sharply, her eyes widening. "Your people are coming too." Eli stared upward, his breath catching. The night sky filled with 2 fleets, one human, one alien, both descending toward the same frozen valley. "This place will become a battlefield," Alara whispered. "Not if I can stop it," Eli said, stepping forward. He closed his eyes, reaching inward toward the bond. He felt the pulse of the vault, the hum of thousands of Chiron souls, and somewhere beyond that, the faint rhythm of human satellites circling above. He reached for both, not as soldier, not as survivor, but as bridge. His body glowed brighter, light spilling from his fingertips into the air. Energy rippled outward in waves, touching both the Chiron fleet and the human ships. And then, silence. Engines dimmed, weapons powered down, the air stilled. For the first time in centuries, 2 sides listened. Alara stared at him in awe, her voice trembling. "You linked them." Eli opened his eyes, silver light fading from his veins. "I just reminded them what they're fighting for." She smiled, tears glowing faintly. "You built more than a cabin, Eli Harper," she said softly. "You built peace." Above them, the stars shimmered like 1,000 witnesses. The Chiron ships slowly lowered their weapons, and the human fleet held its fire. The valley, once marked by war and silence, became still again. Eli stood beside Alara, his breath misting in the cold air. "So," he said quietly, "what happens now?" Alara looked to the sky, her cloak fluttering like light against the snow. "Now," she said, "we rebuild together, your world and mine." The dawn broke over the horizon, golden light washing over the valley. The snow glittered like a sea of stars fallen to earth. Eli took one last look at his cabin, the home he built in silence. Then he turned to Alara. "Ready?" he asked. She smiled, eyes soft and full of promise. "I've been waiting a lifetime," she whispered. And as the sun rose over a world forever changed, a human and an alien walked side by side into the light. No longer strangers, no longer broken, but builders of something the stars themselves had forgotten. A new beginning, born from silence, bound by heart, carried by hope.